So you need to look at your rear brake shoes. Well, first off, you don't even need to get dirty to find out whether you possibly have got wear on your rear brake shoes. The brake pedal itself can tell you quite a bit, and that in combination with the handbrake from sat here in the cab can make you think it's time to get on with the job. Well, firstly, it's important that you take your handbrake off, so we'll just do that first. And then it's just simply a case of putting pressure onto the brake pedal. Now, this is going down quite a long way. There are two things that we're looking out for. One is the amount of travel that you get first, and then secondly, once you've got to the end of the travel, you need to see if it's spongy, because that will indicate that we've got some air in the brake lines. Now, once we've done this operation, remember you're just pushing down quite firmly, then try it with the handbrake on, all the way as far as you can pull it, and try again. And I can tell there's a slight difference there, indicates that there's certainly some wear or poor adjustment on those rear shoes. Ideally, the handbrake, when you pull it out, should click somewhere between 8 and 10 times. Any more than that or an excessive distance here, again, shows that you've got poor adjustment or very bad wear on the rear shoes. This is obviously way too far out. Okay, so we're working on the rear brakes. We can only do that by safely jacking the van up. If you've not done that before, please refer to the Just Kampers how-to video on how to do that safely. Remove the rear wheel, and then we can get on with the job. Okay, so we can look at the parts available from Just Kampers for this job. Not that you might need to use all of them. We have the rear drum here, a genuine rear backing plate, our rear shoes, the wheel cylinder, the star adjuster, and the retaining bolt, which do have a tendency to rust up, and obviously our retaining pins, anti-rattle pins, whatever you call them. And here we have a complete brake shoe fitting kit with the pins, the rattle springs, a magnetic screwdriver always useful. We're not going to necessarily use all of this stuff here, but it is useful to buy it in advance. We are working on a late bay window at the moment, which we've seen has got a composite drum, so we don't necessarily have to remove the castellated nut, but it's worthwhile pointing out the tools, again available from Just Kampers, a 46mm socket and a rather large and sturdy 3/4 breaker bar. The actual tools we're going to need is an 11mm spanner and socket for removing the composite drum, 13mm spanner for undoing the handbrakes, and that's at the front, and some pliers for just loosening out the safety pin, the cotter pin, or even a split pin, depending on however you refer to it, and one specialist tool to assist with removing the anti-rattle springs. We're going to look at removing the rear brake drum then to inspect the shoes. A few things to bear in mind, health and safety again. First off, safety glasses. We're going to be using a hammer more than likely just to loosen the drum off, and we're certainly going to be spraying around some brake cleaner to get rid of that rather toxic brake dust. And as ever, you read the instructions on the back. It is hazardous to the environment and, of course, extremely flammable. So make sure you do give that a good read through. Now, firstly, you need to look at the composite drum itself. If you have a stock bay window van and you have stock steel wheels on it, then you should still have two 11mm bolts here on the drum. The bolts would normally be here, but they have been removed because just here we have an alloy that comes on this vehicle. You may be fitting alloys for the first time, and it's important that you take those bolts out, otherwise it will damage the surface of the face of the wheel just here and here, or in extreme circumstances where it's made of very hard material, you'll actually get a wobbly wheel. So position the wheel on the floor and take a perch on there. Remember, the wheel is your friend, and make sure you have your dust mask in position. We're going to tap with a hammer. Remember, safety glasses on too. And it should just wiggle off. Now, if you forgot to undo your handbrake cables, there's no way you would be able to withdraw the drum like this. And if we look into the bottom there, we can see an awful lot of brake shoe dust, which does confirm the fact that there's a lot of wear on these rear shoes. Okay, so again, being careful with this stuff. It's extremely flammable. Certainly no smoking when you're doing this. Liberal dousing in the drum, and then there's an awful lot of loose stuff here, so we're going to take it down, and maybe just to save the clearing up later, put some paper or a rag underneath, and that will catch all the dirt as it washes off. a quick clear up of the working area, and we don't want to be leaving any of that flammable brake fluid down there. Okay, now it's time to inspect the parts then. Well, the first thing to look at then is the brake drum, and what we're looking for is a nice even surface in here. Some striations or scoring are fine, but that does look okay. Now, one thing to particularly look out for is a large ridge all the way around the rim here, and that would indicate the drum's quite old and it's had an awful lot of wear. If you had have had that lump on the edge here, the ridge, it would have been quite difficult to draw the drum over the handbrake, but that drum's looking very good. And so it's time to look at the brake shoes themselves. Firstly, a visual glance over, make sure there's no uneven wear anywhere, and then do a comparison between the front and the back shoes. And the absolute classic has happened here, where somebody's over-adjusted the handbrake or forgotten to slacken the handbrake off before adjusting the shoes equally. And we can see that the front shoe, the leading shoe, the handbrake shoe, however you want to refer to it, has actually worn a good 2 or 3 mil more than the back shoe down here. Okay, we're going to look at the anti-rattle pin then, that also holds the brake shoe in place. And you can see the process here. There is the pin just here with the retaining clip on the end. And what you have to do is line it up with the slot, push it down against the spring, turn it through 90 degrees, and then it locks off in these little recesses. And the removal, of course, is the reverse. You push down, twist, and lift the whole assembly out. To make it easier, we've got this tool here which simply fits over the retaining clip, and we can exert more pressure evenly using that than a pair of pliers. Okay, so we take our little tool, we put our finger around the back of the brake backing plate and push against the pin, put this over the retaining clip, push down, turn through 90 degrees, well, you can also do this with a traditional pair of pliers as well. A little bit more coordination required, but you just go round, lightly squeeze together so you're holding it, twist and pull, and again, out everything comes. Right, we're getting ready to take the brake shoes themselves off, and the springs may have been fitted anyway in the past, but we can see one of the 3 springs that holds it on. We've got one at the front, one at the back, and then a big one right across at the top. So it's just a case of working it through with a pair of pliers. That one went straight through. The back one is probably going to be more of a fiddle. I've been at work. There we go. That has gone. Right, next we need to just wiggle it and pull it clear of the adjuster down here. And the same at the back. Bearing in mind the back one has the handbrake cable mechanism on it there. Okay, now we've just slackened the handbrake cable off just a little bit more. It should now be free enough to pull off at the end there. Pull that free, and we're almost there now. And there we have our shoes out, and we'll be retaining this mechanism, and the springs, as all seems to be in good condition. It's not worn out anywhere. The one thing you may have to do is use another horseshoe clip on the back there. In fact, that's not even a standard Volkswagen clip on there, so we'll have to look at getting one of those on. Okay, now all the shoes are out of the way, a quick general check of the backing plate. And whilst there's a little bit of light rusting on the edges here, it's perfectly serviceable. The most important thing is that the access to the star adjusters behind isn't too worn. And then we can have a look up at the condition of the wheel cylinder. We had a look earlier when we first took the drum off to make sure it wasn't too wet and damp, and if this wheel cylinder was leaking you would see obvious staining coming down here, and where it was wet all the brake dust would have stuck to it. It would be a right gooey mess, but that wheel cylinder's A-OK. Okay, if you can, keep the old shoes together whilst you're orientating yourself, and things to note are the spreader plate that goes across and the spring that goes across here. And you can see where the spreader plate notches go in here and the springs locate here on the new shoes. There's also the clip to keep the spring into place, and here we've got the handbrake operating lever. Basically the handbrake pulls on the end here, pivots it forwards, and the plate here pushes the handbrake cable into place. That's how your handbrake operates. There's also, when we look over on the new setup here, the spring that holds the bottoms of the shoes together and forces the shoes into the adjuster positions here. And these star adjusters quite often rust up. It's a good idea to treat them with copper grease when you reassemble. There's a hole in the back which we'll literally be putting through the screwdriver through and flicking on these, and as we turn those, these screws come out and it adjusts your brake shoes. So all you'll be doing is putting your screwdriver through against the backing plate and then literally just clicking through each one, and that will be adjusting the other side. Now it is important to remember, one way makes the shoes come back towards you and one way makes them go out towards the drum. If you go more than 3 turns and the drum's still loose, you'll go in the wrong way, so you need to turn around and go back the other way. Okay, so we'll look at a rear wheel cylinder then. Here it is, and basically you've got a cylinder here. There are 2 pistons on each end and then the rubber sleeves that keep it all together. Now obviously when you come to replace your wheel cylinder, you'll need to first take the brake shoes off, so have a look at the relevant Just Kampers how-to on how to do that. The final things to explain, just on the reverse side, where you can see the yellow bung there is where your hard line will come in, and if it's a rear shoe, that's more than likely going to be a metal hard line. If it's a front wheel cylinder you're dealing with, it might well be a flexible coming in here, and then the all-important bleed nipple here for when you're taking any air out of the system. And of course, a screw to undo it, although it's most unlikely to be an Allen key. That will more than likely be a 13mm headed bolt there.